Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast. That is, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot with the Wall Street Journal with Kim Strassel and Kate Batchelder Odell. We're talking about the House Republicans seeming to have a pretty good shot at getting to 218 votes for their debt ceiling bill. I think the one thing to stress is that if they fail here, they will have no shot at any kind of compromise. They'll be routed. So it's a case of hang together or hang separately. Now, the interesting question is if they do pass this, what happens next? They will be on record as saying, we have passed a bill to raise the debt ceiling. Over to you, Mr. President. Over to you, Senate Democrats. Chuck Schumer, the Senate leader, has said he's not going to negotiate. The President Biden has said that, as we talked about earlier. But it seems to me the Biden strategy is clear here. Delay any talks. Delay. As you said, Kim, not meeting with McCarthy. Wait until the debt deadline nears. Cry havoc. Cry first default in history, etc. Figure the press corps and all of Wall Street will get really nervous, back them up. Maybe the stock market falls 1,000 points in a day, who knows? And then figure the Republicans will scatter faster than the Iraqi army in the first Gulf War. And they won't be able to keep together. To avoid a debt default, McConnell will get 10 votes in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, to pass it in the Senate. Then the House will be forced to use McCarthy to get Democratic votes to raise the debt ceiling. That's what he's betting on, and they figure that that's what's going to happen. Now, the question is whether Republicans can hold firm enough here so that Biden begins to take on some responsibility himself for not negotiating. An interesting turn, Kim, was Joe Manchin came out, the senator from West Virginia, a Democrat, and he gave a relatively favorable response to the Republican proposal. Said doesn't agree with everything, but he said this is the only proposal now that is actually doing anything moving through Congress to reduce the debt ceiling, and the president should sit down and negotiate. So that's one Democrat who says we should negotiate. Now, it's certainly not going to turn most of the Democratic caucus, but it does mean that there now is going to be bipartisan support for some kind of negotiation if House Republicans can pass their bill.
Right. And again, it underlines the supreme importance of them sticking together. If they do that, they've got a real shot at this, because this is McCarthy's counter strategy. Is the president is going to say, I'm never backing down, never. And he'll probably continue to do that until elements of his own party potentially make him do so. And so what McCarthy is doing here is putting this out, making a fairly reasonable proposal. As you said, Manchin has now come out. Manchin also, it was quite a slap at the administration, said that refusal to even negotiate over this was, quote, a deficiency of leadership, and it must change. But the pressure is also going to be leveled at other Democrats, in particular those who are facing re-election next year and those who come from states where the electorate really would have some problems with their elected representative refusing to even talk about spending reductions. These are guys like John Tester in Montana or Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona. You try to put some pressure so that you get 3 or 4 or 5 Democrats who are saying, look, we need to do a deal here. We need to do some sort of spending. That puts pressure on the White House. The media starts to pick up that line, and then the White House ends up having to sit down at the table. Will it work? Again, all comes down to that first vote. And if they can get it across, and if Republicans in the Senate also, I mean, we had Susan Collins come out and say, look, this is all on Joe Biden now. We need a deal. This is a very reasonable proposal to cut our debt and our deficits. We have to deal with this. You know, she's a moderate from Maine. So if they stick behind McCarthy, then he's got some leverage.
If you do the Biden brinksmanship strategy, delay, don't negotiate at all, hope Republicans will scatter in the end under pressure. It's a dicey strategy because it means that if you're toying with a potential default, even if it's a technical default. Somebody submits a Treasury bill for redemption and you don't have the cash to redeem it or to pay interest on it. That's not going to be by itself an event that would show the U.S. is bankrupt, but it would be damaging as a technical default. The Treasury, I think, has the capacity to prioritize how it makes payments. So the Treasury doesn't have to default even if the debt limit is reached, because federal revenues are still coming in, and they may not pay for all of the government at one time if the debt limit is reached, but they would be able to finance interest payments well above. Revenue comes in well above the level of interest payments and debt redemptions. So some parts of the government would have to shut down. Some payments would not be made. But there's no excuse for Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, causing a default. And I think in that level of a game of chicken, if you will, she will back down and she will make those payments, Kate.
Right. And what does that say about their entire strategy so far? It would make them look like they had not been negotiating in good faith. And I think they're counting on there being no political accountability for that. The last thing I'd say, Paul, is it really is a testament to this whole process that Joe Biden has become really hostage to the progressive left. If Biden were to come offer the Republicans part of, say, their work requirement ask, Joe Biden voted for Bill Clinton's 1996 welfare reform that was predicated on work and welfare. If he offered them that, they'd be hard-pressed to turn it down. And he could pitch it as, bipartisanship. It might help him with independence and an election. That could be a victory for him, but there is just no chance he's going to take that path. And I think it's a testament to how much he's changed and how much his party have moved left.
And how so much of American politics has become a zero-sum game. Either we get total victory or we get total defeat. And I think, to your point, if he would sit down, negotiate, and take 2 or 3 of the Republican priorities, or even halfway on 2 or 3 of them, then the Republicans would have to try to say, okay, decide what they're willing to accept, and then go back and try to pass that through their conference. And, it wouldn't be easy, Kim, because there are a lot of Republicans who want a lot more than that. But my personal view would be that even getting a couple of these would be a pretty big policy victory.
Well, that will be the next test of Kevin McCarthy. If he can hold his people together on this vote and he gets the president to sit down. I mean, I agree. I don't think the president is going to proactively come with an offer. But let's say we get to negotiations and let's say they come to a deal. That's going to be where the hard stuff starts, is that while McCarthy's managed to keep all of his people around this particular resolution, it would appear, how many of them are going to demand and hold out for more when some sort of deal is cut with the White House? And he's only got 4 votes to spare, so that's going to be really, really tough. I agree with you entirely. Look, remember, the White House began from the position, no spending cuts, none whatsoever. You have an obligation to raise the debt ceiling. If they get anything in return for this, it's essentially a victory. The question is, can McCarthy make all of his members see that?
Good. This will be an evolving story. Finally today, an update on Evan Gershkovich. He's the Wall Street Journal reporter who is still in a Russian prison. He appealed this week his arrest on what are false espionage charges, but it was denied by the court, so he is still in prison. We did get the ability to see him appearing in court. He looked good, appears to be in good health according to people who visited him, and in good spirits considering his unjust treatment. There's been a lot of movement of national, American, and global support for Evan. Foreign governments have spoken up, press freedom associations. There was a joint statement by Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell, the Senate leaders. President Biden has spoken up, but unfortunately, the Russians don't seem to really fear the United States or Biden anymore, and this means that Evan could be in for a long haul in that Russian prison. The United States needs to find a way to get Russia to release him. We hope they are working on that. They have now put it into the hostage negotiation team by confirming at the State Department that he was unlawfully detained. That means you can add Evan to the list of those that are the focus of that group and has more resources devoted to the negotiation. But we are thinking of Evan and fighting across the board to try to bring him home, and we hope it is very soon. Thank you all for listening. We're here every day with another edition of Potomac Watch. See you tomorrow.